Ao was a young man full of dreams. He was not like the others in his village who only thought about money or showing off. From a very young age, he had loved the land and the animals. He loved to watch seeds grow into plants, and he felt happy when the village children helped him water the small garden behind his house. He wanted to do something that could help the people around him, something that would make life better for everyone, not just for himself. He often thought about opening a small farm where he could grow vegetables and fruits, raise chickens and goats, and teach other young people how to farm. He believed that if people worked together, everyone could have enough food and the village could become strong. But Ao's family did not understand him at all. His father, Baba, was a proud man who cared about wealth and respect. He had worked hard all his life in the trading business, buying and selling goods from nearby towns and cities. He always said that money was the only way to earn respect and power. His older brother, Chuma, thought the same way. Chuma had learned the trading business from their father and was very serious about it. He believed that Ao was wasting his life with his silly ideas about farming. One evening, Ao decided to tell his father and brother about his dream. He waited until the house was quiet. The sun was setting and the sky was orange and pink, giving a warm glow to the small living room where they all sat. He felt nervous, but he knew he had to speak. "Father Chuma," Ao began, his voice soft but steady, "I have been thinking about something for a long time. I want to start a small farm outside the village. I want to grow vegetables and fruits, raise animals, and teach the children and young people how to farm. I believe it will help the village and it can even help us in the long run." Baba laughed loudly, shaking his head. "Ao, you are dreaming too much," he said. "Farming is for people who have no brains. You think planting a few vegetables will make people respect you? We trade goods, we make money, and that is what matters in life. You should forget this foolish idea and come work with us. That is the only way you will have a future." Chuma joined in, his voice sharp and impatient. "Ao, why do you always think differently? Farming is hard work and you will never get rich from it. Why do you want to waste your time? Come and help father. Learn the business like a proper man. You can make a good life that way." Ao felt his heart sink. He had hoped they would understand him, or at least respect his wish to try something different. But now he felt only disappointment. He wanted to speak, to explain that farming was important too, that helping others could make someone strong and respected in another way. But the words got stuck in his throat. He could see in their faces that they would not change their minds. They had already decided he was wrong and they did not care what he thought. For a moment, the room was silent except for the soft sound of the evening wind through the small window. Ao looked at his father's face, stern and unyielding, and then at Chuma, who was already looking at him with impatience. He felt a deep sadness in his chest. He realized that no matter how much he tried, they would never understand him. They wanted him to follow their path, not his own. Finally, Ao took a deep breath. "I understand," he said quietly. "I cannot follow your way. I have to follow my own. I need to do this even if you do not agree. I hope one day you will see why this is important." Baba's eyes narrowed. "You are making a mistake, Ao. One day you will regret this. You will fail and then you will come crawling back to us." Chuma laughed. "Yes, and don't expect us to help you. You chose this path yourself, so you must live with the consequences." Ao felt tears prick his eyes, but he held them back. He had known this moment would come, and he had prepared himself. He nodded silently and left the room. He did not look back. That night he packed a small bag with the few things he owned. He took some clothes, a few tools he had made himself for farming, and a small notebook where he had written down his ideas and plans. Lami, his neighbor and childhood friend, came by to say goodbye. She looked worried. "Ao, are you sure about this?" she asked softly. "It is dangerous to go alone. Maybe your father and brother will change their minds if you stay." Ao shook his head. "No, Lami. I cannot stay. They will never support me. I have to try this on my own. I want to make a life that I can be proud of, a life that can help others too." Lami hugged him tightly. "I hope you succeed, Ao. I really do. You are brave and I know your heart is strong." Ao smiled faintly. "Thank you. That means a lot. I will come back one day and maybe then they will understand." The next morning, Ao left the village quietly. The sun had just risen, painting the sky in soft colors. The birds were singing and the air smelled fresh and new. He walked along the dirt path that led to the town where he planned to start his farm. His heart was heavy with sadness for leaving his family, but it was also full of hope. He knew that the road ahead would be hard. He would face hunger, loneliness, and challenges he could not yet imagine. But he also knew that he had to try. As he walked, he thought about the lessons his father and brother had taught him, even if they did not mean to. He had learned how to work hard and be disciplined. He had learned that people could be stubborn and judgmental, and that sometimes you had to stand alone to follow your dreams. He clenched his small bag tightly, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. Along the way he passed fields and small farms where other villagers worked. He looked at the soil, the plants and the animals, imagining what he could do. He imagined planting rows of vegetables, building a small chicken coop and teaching children to care for the land. The dream felt alive in his mind, giving him strength with every step. By the time the sun was high in the sky, Ao had left the village behind. He had no home to return to yet, no certainty about what awaited him, but he carried hope and determination. He knew that even if the world laughed at him, even if his family rejected him, he could create a life of meaning and purpose. And so, Ao walked forward, leaving behind the pain of rejection, carrying only his dreams, his courage and his belief that one day he would show everyone, including his family, that following your heart is never a mistake. Ao stepped into the new town with nothing but a small bag of belongings and a heart full of hope. The town was bigger and louder than his village. The streets were filled with people selling goods, children running to school, and carts moving along the dirt roads. Ao looked around with wide eyes. Everything was new, and he realized that life outside his village would be harder than he had imagined. The first days were the hardest. Ao had no home, no friends and almost no money. He slept under the stars or in empty barns he found along the edge of town. The nights were cold and he shivered in his thin clothes. Food was scarce and many times he went hungry. Every morning he woke up with a sore back and tired hands, but he told himself he could not give up. This was the life he had chosen, and he believed that his dream of a small farm could one day become real. He spent his days looking for work. Sometimes he carried water for shopkeepers or helped unload sacks of grain at the market. The pay was small, but it was enough to buy a little food. He would sit in a quiet corner at night, thinking about his dream. He imagined green fields, rows of vegetables, and chickens pecking around a small yard. The dream gave him energy when his body was weak, and hope when the world seemed too harsh. One morning, while helping a farmer unload crates of tomatoes, he met a woman named Lami. She was kind and gentle, with a warm smile that made Ao feel at ease. She noticed how tired he looked but also how determined he was. "You work very hard," she said, handing him a crate. "But I can see there is more in your heart than just labor. What is it that you want?" Ao hesitated but then told her everything. "I want to start a small farm," he said. "I want to grow vegetables and fruits and raise animals. I want to help people and show that farming can make life better. But it is hard. I have no money, no land, and no one to help me." Lami nodded thoughtfully. "That is a good dream," she said. "It will not be easy, but if your heart is strong you can do it. Sometimes we have to face difficulties to reach our goals. I will help you if I can." From that day Lami became a friend and guide to Ao. She taught him about the soil in the town, where to get seeds, and how to grow crops even in a small space. Ao worked harder than ever. He woke up before sunrise and worked until the sun began to set. He carried water from the well, tilled the small patch of land he had rented, and planted seeds with careful hands. Each day his muscles ached, his fingers were rough, and his body felt heavy, but he smiled when he saw the tiny shoots of plants breaking through the soil. Weeks turned into months. Ao faced many challenges. Some days the rain did not come and the soil was dry and cracked. Other days the rain came too much and water flooded the small field, washing away some of the seeds. He battled pests that ate the young plants, and sometimes his neighbors laughed at his small farm, saying it would never succeed. But Ao did not give up. He remembered the words of Lami, "If your heart is strong, you can do it." He worked even harder, learning from every mistake. When the soil was too dry, he dug small canals to carry water from a nearby stream. When pests came, he made simple fences and used natural methods to protect the crops. Slowly he began to see results. The small shoots grew taller, the leaves turned green, and tiny vegetables began to appear. Finally the first harvest arrived. Ao collected the small vegetables he had grown, tomatoes, peppers, okra, and onions, and carried them to the market. He had no cart, so he balanced the baskets on his head and walked through the crowded streets. People stopped to look at his fresh vegetables. Many bought them immediately, impressed by their quality. Ao felt a thrill in his heart. This was the first taste of success, and it encouraged him to work even harder. Each day, Ao's small farm grew a little larger. He rented more land as he earned money from selling crops. He planted more varieties of vegetables and began raising a few chickens and goats. The villagers started to notice him. They saw a young man working tirelessly, helping others and providing fresh food. Slowly his reputation grew. People came to him for advice about farming, and Ao gladly shared what he had learned. He taught children how to care for plants and animals, showing them that farming could be rewarding and important. While Ao's life was hard, it was also full of small joys. He felt pride when a plant he nurtured grew strong and healthy. He laughed with Lami as they worked together, sharing stories and dreams. He felt satisfaction when villagers praised his vegetables and asked for his help. Each small success was a step toward his bigger dream, and it made the long days of labor feel worthwhile. Meanwhile, back in his village, Ao's family lived in comfort but without excitement. Baba continued his trading business, but many deals failed and Chuma grew frustrated with his own work. They heard rumors about Ao but dismissed them at first. "He will never make it," Baba said. "He chose a foolish path. We will see him return one day hungry and begging." But as time passed, whispers of a young man who had a successful farm and helped his new community reached their ears. They did not want to admit it, but they began to feel a twinge of worry and shame. Ao did not think about his family much during these years. He focused on his work, his small farm, and the people he was helping. He knew that success would speak louder than words. He also knew that he could not rely on anyone but himself. Every sunrise brought new challenges but also new hope. He learned patience, perseverance, and the power of believing in his own heart. Months became years. Ao's farm grew bigger and stronger. He employed some villagers to help with planting and harvesting. He saved enough money to build a small house and a stable for the animals. His life, though full of work, was also full of purpose. Lami stood by him, supporting him and sharing his vision for the future. The struggles of the past seemed far away, replaced by the joy of accomplishment and the satisfaction of following his dream. Ao never forgot the early days of hunger and cold nights. They reminded him of the value of hard work and determination. He learned to face problems without fear, to find solutions even when things seemed impossible, and to never give up on his dreams. Every challenge became a lesson, and every small victory became a building block for the future. And so, the young man who had been rejected by his family began to grow in strength, skill, and reputation. In the busy town, surrounded by the green fields he had nurtured, Ao stood tall and proud. He knew that his journey was only beginning, but he also knew that he could survive anything. The struggles he faced made him stronger, and the perseverance he showed would one day change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. Years passed, and Ao's life had changed in ways he had never imagined when he first left his village. The small farm he had begun with empty hands and big dreams had grown into a thriving piece of land filled with vegetables, fruits, and animals. Chickens wandered freely in the yard, goats grazed peacefully, and rows of tomatoes, peppers, okra, and other vegetables grew in neat lines under Ao's careful eyes. The farm was alive with activity, and every corner reflected the hard work, patience, and care that Ao had poured into it over the years. Lami had been with him through every step. She shared his vision, worked alongside him, and encouraged him when things seemed too hard. Together they built not only a farm but a home filled with love and joy. Their small house, made of strong wood and clay, had a garden full of flowers, a kitchen that smelled of fresh herbs and cooked vegetables, and a quiet corner where they could sit and watch the sun set over the green fields. Ao often thought that this life, born from struggle and perseverance, was better than anything he had dreamed of as a boy. The villagers respected him deeply. They admired his work ethic, his willingness to share knowledge, and the care he showed for people and land alike. Many young men and women came to him for advice on farming, and Ao never refused. He taught them how to plant seeds, how to care for animals, and how to use the soil wisely. He encouraged them to think creatively, to try new methods, and to work together as a community. In return, the villagers helped him with the farm during busy seasons, bringing energy, laughter, and a sense of family to the fields. Ao's reputation spread beyond the town. People from neighboring villages came to see his farm and learn from his methods. Some even bought produce directly from him, impressed by its freshness and quality. What had started as a tiny patch of land and a few seeds had grown into something that fed many people and inspired hope. Ao often stood in the middle of the fields, watching the workers and smiling quietly. He felt pride, not for money or fame, but for the life he had built and the good he had done for others. Life was not always easy though. The farm still faced challenges. Sometimes the weather was harsh, with sudden storms or dry spells that threatened the crops. There were seasons when pests attacked the plants, and Ao had to work day and night to save the harvest. But these challenges never defeated him. Each problem was met with patience and wisdom. He experimented with new ways to protect the crops, worked closely with the villagers and learned from every mistake. Over time he became not only a farmer but a teacher, a leader, and a man whose heart was strong enough to face anything. Meanwhile, far away in the village he had left, life was becoming difficult for his family. Baba's trading business, once successful, began to fail. Deals that had seemed profitable turned into losses, and customers stopped trusting them. Baba's pride and stubbornness made it hard for him to accept advice from others, and slowly his wealth and influence began to decline. Chuma too struggled. He tried to earn respect in the community, but people remembered Ao and admired his hard work and success. Chuma felt the sting of comparison, and it grew heavier with each passing day. Despite their troubles, Baba and Chuma were unwilling to admit that they had underestimated Ao. They told themselves that farming was not as important as trade, that Ao had only been lucky, and that he would eventually fail. But deep down they could not ignore the stories they heard from neighbors and traders about the young man who had built a thriving farm, employed villagers, and inspired the community. Every rumor and piece of news cut deeper than they wanted to admit, filling their hearts with shame and regret. Back at the farm, Ao rarely thought about his family. His life was full and busy and he focused on the work that mattered. But he did remember them sometimes, especially in quiet moments when the sun was setting, and he was alone in the fields. He thought about how they had rejected him, laughed at his dreams and told him he would fail. At first, those memories had hurt him deeply, but now they served as reminders of his journey. He had walked a difficult path, faced hardships and persevered. He had proved to himself that he could overcome rejection, fear and uncertainty. Lami often noticed Ao looking thoughtful as he walked through the fields. "What are you thinking about?" she asked one evening as they sat on the small wooden bench outside their house. Ao smiled faintly. "I was just thinking about the past," he said. "About the village and my family. I left with nothing but hope and now, look at this. We have made something real. Something that matters." Lami squeezed his hand. "You worked for it. You believed in yourself when no one else did. That is why it is real." Ao nodded, feeling warmth in his heart. He knew she was right. The farm, the community, and the life they had built together were the results of his determination, courage, and belief in his dreams. The contrast between Ao's life and that of his family grew more apparent as the years passed. While he thrived, they struggled. Baba's pride prevented him from asking for help or learning from others, and Chuma's frustration made him bitter and unhappy. The stories of Ao's success reached the village regularly, and each tale reminded them of the mistake they had made when they rejected him. They could not deny the truth. Ao had grown stronger, wiser, and more respected than they had ever imagined. Ao, however, remained humble. He never boasted about his achievements or sought revenge. He understood that success was not about making others feel small, but about working hard, helping others, and living a meaningful life. He continued to work tirelessly on the farm, teach the villagers, and improve the land. Every day brought new lessons, new challenges, and new opportunities to make a difference. People often came to him with questions or problems, and Ao helped whenever he could. A villager struggling with soil that would not grow plants came to him one morning. Ao examined the land carefully, tested the soil, and suggested ways to improve it. Within weeks, the crops began to grow, and the villager was overjoyed. Stories like these spread through the town, and Ao's reputation as a wise, kind, and successful man continued to grow. In the evenings, after the work was done, Ao and Lami would walk through the fields, hand in hand. The sunset painted the sky with orange, pink, and gold, and the land seemed to glow with life. They would talk about the past, the future, and their dreams. They laughed at the small mistakes of the day and celebrated every victory, no matter how minor. Life was not perfect, but it was theirs, built with love, hard work, and shared dreams. Ao sometimes thought about his family's reaction if they saw him now. He wondered if they would finally understand the value of his work, the strength of his character, and the impact he had made on so many lives. But he did not dwell on it for long. His focus was on the present and the future, on the farm, the people who relied on him, and the life he and Lami were creating together. The farm continued to grow. Ao experimented with new crops, improved his irrigation methods, and expanded the land he had rented. The news of Ao's success had traveled far, faster than his family could have imagined. Stories reached his village and beyond of a young man who had built a thriving farm, employed villagers, taught children, and inspired the community. People spoke of his honesty, kindness, and hard work. They talked about the quality of his vegetables and the care he showed for the animals. They praised his ability to turn a small piece of land into a prosperous farm that brought hope and opportunity to many. Back in the village where Ao had grown up, Baba and Chuma could no longer ignore what they had once dismissed. Baba sat in his house, staring at the floor, his pride and anger replaced by worry and shame. He had tried to continue his trading business, but it had failed repeatedly. Bad deals, dishonest traders, and misfortune had left him struggling to maintain what he had built over decades. Chuma too felt the weight of failure. He had attempted to follow in his father's footsteps, but people remembered Ao and admired his hard work and success more than Chuma's trading efforts. The two men had lived comfortably for years, confident in their wealth and status, but now that illusion had faded. Baba could no longer deny the truth. "Chuma," he said one evening, his voice low and heavy, "we made a terrible mistake. We laughed at him. We told him he would fail and we sent him away. Now look at him. Everyone respects him and we are struggling to survive. We rejected our own son, our own flesh and blood. How could we be so blind?" Chuma lowered his head. "I know, father. I see it every day. People in the village admire him. They talk about how much he helps them, how hard he works, how wise he has become. And here we are, losing what little respect we had. I never realized how wrong we were." The shame and regret they felt were heavy, but neither of them knew what to do. They could not undo the past, and they were afraid to face Ao, fearing that he would reject them as they had once rejected him. But the thought of the life they had squandered while their brother or son had built something meaningful burned in their hearts. They knew they had to try. One morning, Baba and Chuma set out toward the town where Ao had built his farm. They walked quietly, their minds filled with worry and fear. They did not speak much on the way, only occasionally glancing at the fields in the distance and thinking about the boy they had once pushed away. When they finally reached the outskirts of the farm, they hesitated. The sight before them was breathtaking. Lush green fields stretched as far as the eye could see. Chickens clucked happily in the yard, goats wandered among the fences, and villagers moved among the crops with energy and purpose. At the center stood Ao, tall and strong, guiding his workers with a calm but confident manner. For a moment, Baba and Chuma simply watched, unable to speak. The sight of their son, who they had once rejected, thriving and respected, filled them with a mixture of awe, shame, and longing. Baba's eyes filled with tears, though he tried to hide them. "Is this our son?" he whispered. Chuma swallowed hard, his throat tight. "Yes," he said quietly. "It is him. And we were wrong." Finally, gathering their courage, they stepped forward. Ao noticed the movement at the edge of the fields and turned. His eyes widened slightly in recognition. He had not expected them to come, and he had not thought of them often in recent years, but seeing them now brought back memories of pain, rejection, and disbelief. Baba bowed his head, his voice trembling. "Ao, my son, I do not know where to begin. We were wrong. We laughed at you. We rejected you. And now we see the greatness of your work, your courage, and your heart. Please, forgive us. We ask for your help, and we hope you can show mercy on us who were blind." Chuma stepped forward as well. "Brother, I cannot say it was right to send you away. I thought I knew better, but I see now how wrong I was. You are strong, wise, and kind. Please, help us. We made a terrible mistake, and I hope we are not too late." Ao looked at them, standing in the middle of the fields he had built with his own hands, and felt a deep, complicated wave of emotion. Anger, sadness, and hurt from the past rose up in him, but so did calm and understanding. He had worked hard, suffered, and endured without them. He had learned to rely on himself, and he had grown stronger because of it. For a long time he said nothing. He simply walked toward them slowly, taking in their faces, their bowed heads, and the sorrow that showed in their eyes. He remembered every harsh word, every laugh, every time they had dismissed his dreams. But he also remembered how far he had come and how much he had grown. Finally Ao spoke, his voice steady but gentle. "I see your sorrow," he said. "I hear your words. And I understand that you now realize your mistake. But understand this, I am not the same boy you sent away. I have worked, suffered, and built a life with my own hands. I have helped many people, and I have learned to stand strong on my own. I can forgive, but I will not forget the pain you caused me." Baba and Chuma nodded, tears streaming down their faces. "We understand," Baba said, voice breaking. "We only hope that you can show mercy on us. We were blind and we see the truth now." Ao looked around the farm, at the workers tending the crops, at Lami standing nearby with a quiet smile of support, and at the animals wandering freely. He felt a sense of calm. "I will help you," he said finally. "But know this, you must learn humility and respect. You must understand that life is not only about money or pride. Help comes to those who work hard, who are kind, and who have courage. If you are willing to learn, then I will guide you." Baba bowed his head deeper. Yes, I will learn. I will respect you and the life you have built. Chuma echoed the words, a small smile breaking through his tears. I will follow your guidance, brother. I see now that we were wrong and I want to learn. Ao turned to the workers and villagers, who had gathered quietly to watch the scene. They murmured softly among themselves, impressed by the humility of the two men who had once rejected the boy now grown into a man of strength and wisdom. The villagers respected Ao not only for his work but also for the way he handled the situation. He did not shout or punish, but he stood firm, calm and wise, showing that true strength is in patience, understanding and fairness. For the rest of the day, Ao showed Baba and Chuma around the farm. He explained how the crops were planted, how the animals were cared for, and how the villagers were organized to work together. He showed them the results of years of dedication, teaching and perseverance. Baba and Chuma listened carefully, asking questions and learning for the first time what it meant to build something meaningful with hard work, patience and kindness. After years of hard work, challenges and perseverance, Ao had reached a point in his life where he could look back without anger. He had built a successful farm, helped many villagers and gained the respect of his community. He had grown from the boy who had been rejected by his family into a man of strength, wisdom and kindness. When Baba and Chuma finally came to him seeking forgiveness and guidance, Ao had listened carefully, understanding the sorrow and regret in their hearts. He had forgiven them not out of weakness, but because he had learned that forgiveness was a choice that freed him more than anyone else. Yet, forgiveness did not mean that he would let them control his life. Ao had spent too many years building his independence, earning his respect, and creating a life that reflected his values and dreams. He had worked for everything he had, and he knew that giving that power away would be a mistake. He welcomed Baba and Chuma's help on the farm, but he made it clear that he would continue to make the decisions. The farm had become his responsibility, his creation and his vision, and he intended to protect it. The villagers noticed the change immediately. Baba and Chuma had come humbly, working alongside others in the fields, repairing fences, planting crops and caring for animals. Their pride and arrogance had faded, replaced by genuine effort and a desire to learn. Ao guided them patiently, showing them how to perform the work correctly and how to treat people with respect. They listened, sometimes stumbling, sometimes asking questions but always learning. Slowly they began to understand what Ao had known all along. True success was built on humility, hard work and care for others, not on pride, wealth or status. Lami stood by Ao as always, helping with the farm and supporting him in difficult moments. She admired the patience and fairness he showed, even toward the people who had caused him great pain. "You are stronger than most people I know," she said one evening as they watched the sunset together. "You forgive, you guide and yet you never lose yourself. That is rare." Ao smiled faintly. "It is not easy," he admitted. "But I have learned that holding on to anger only hurts me. I can forgive and still keep my life on my own terms. That is the balance I must have." The farm continued to thrive. Ao expanded the fields, introduced new crops, and built a small greenhouse to grow plants year-round. He improved irrigation systems, created storage for harvested crops, and organized the workers so that everyone had a role. Villagers came not only to work but to learn. Young people from nearby towns asked him to teach them, and Ao gladly shared his knowledge. He wanted the farm to be more than a business. He wanted it to be a place of growth, hope, and education. Baba and Chuma continued to work hard, learning the skills and values they had once dismissed. Baba, who had always relied on pride and reputation, now understood the importance of patience and humility. He learned to listen to Ao and the villagers, to respect others' ideas, and to work quietly and steadily. Chuma, who had once believed he knew everything, discovered the value of learning and the satisfaction of earning respect through hard work rather than arrogance. Both men experienced the consequences of their past behavior, feeling shame for the mistakes they had made, but also hope as they learned to live differently. One morning, Ao stood at the edge of the fields, watching the workers planting rows of vegetables. The sun shone brightly, casting long shadows across the green land. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction. Everything he had gone through, the hunger, the loneliness, the struggles, the rejection, had led him to this moment. He realized that life had a way of teaching lessons, sometimes harshly but always with purpose. He had proven to himself and the world that resilience, patience and self-belief could overcome cruelty, arrogance and narrow-mindedness. The villagers came to him frequently for advice and support. Some asked for help planting new crops, others sought guidance on raising animals, and many simply came to talk to a man who had proven that dreams could be achieved through hard work. Ao treated them all with kindness, offering advice, encouragement, and practical help. He never sought praise or recognition, but the villagers admired him deeply. They saw in him a man who had faced great obstacles and yet had risen above them, not by force or cunning, but by courage, intelligence, and a generous heart. Even Baba and Chuma began to feel proud of their younger brother in a way they had never allowed themselves before. Their respect for him grew daily as they worked alongside him, seeing the skill, wisdom, and patience he had developed. They understood now that rejection had been their mistake, that the boy they had dismissed was not only talented but morally strong and capable of great things. Yet they also understood that they could not take credit for his success. Ao's achievements were entirely his own, born of his effort, determination, and refusal to give up. As months passed, life at the farm settled into a steady rhythm. Mornings were filled with work, afternoons with learning and teaching, and evenings with quiet reflection and conversation. Ao often walked through the fields, checking on plants and animals, speaking with workers, and enjoying the satisfaction of seeing his vision come to life. He sometimes thought about the past, but only to remind himself of the journey he had made. He knew that holding on to bitterness would harm him, while forgiveness and patience allowed him to move forward. One day, a young man from a neighboring village approached Ao with a question. He was eager to learn and had heard stories about the success of the farm. "Sir," he said politely, "how did you achieve all this? How did you turn a small farm into something so wonderful?" Ao looked at him, smiling. "It was not easy," he said. "I faced many problems, many days when I thought I could not continue. But I believed in myself and my dream. I worked hard, learned from my mistakes, and never gave up. And most importantly, I treated others with respect and kindness, because success is not only about work but about how you help and inspire others." The young man nodded thoughtfully, clearly impressed. "I hope I can be like you someday," he said. "You can," Ao replied gently. "If you believe in yourself, work hard, and stay true to your values, you can achieve anything." Life continued, and Ao's farm became a symbol of hope and resilience. People from far away came to see it, learn from it, and be inspired by the story of a boy who had been rejected by his own family but had refused to let that define him. Baba and Chuma learned humility, not just through words but through action, and their lives slowly improved as they applied the lessons Ao had shown them. They understood the value of patience, respect, and honesty. Ao's story spread even further, reaching other villages and towns. People spoke of the man who had faced rejection and hardship yet built a life of meaning, respect, and generosity. They admired how he had maintained his integrity, refused to let bitterness control him, and used his success to benefit others. His life became proof that cruelty, arrogance, and narrow-mindedness cannot overcome determination, hard work, and a kind heart. Even as he grew older, Ao never stopped working. Each season brought new challenges, and he met them with patience and courage. He expanded the farm further, experimented with new crops, and trained more young people to help the village and the surrounding communities. He remained humble, kind, and focused on his vision, never allowing success to make him forget the journey that had brought him here. At the end of each day, Ao would walk to the top of a small hill overlooking the fields. He would watch the sun set, the sky painted in warm colors, and the land alive with people, animals, and crops. He felt peace in his heart, knowing that he had created a life that mattered, a life that inspired, and a life that proved the value of resilience, self-belief, and integrity. Baba and Chuma often joined him on the hill. They did not speak much, but their presence was respectful and thoughtful. They had learned humility and patience and understood that the past mistakes could not be undone, but they could honor the lessons by living differently. They had experienced the consequences of arrogance and pride and had grown as people, guided by the wisdom of the brother they had once rejected. And so, the story of Ao came full circle. The boy who had been rejected, laughed at, and sent away had become a man whose life was rich with achievement, respect, and purpose. He had forgiven those who hurt him but never allowed them to control his destiny. He had helped the village generously while keeping his independence. He had taught patience, humility, and perseverance through example, proving that true strength comes from resilience, self-belief, and a kind heart. Ao's farm continued to grow, a living testament to the power of courage, hard work, and the refusal to give up. The villagers flourished alongside him, and Baba and Chuma learned valuable lessons they could not have learned any other way. Life was not perfect, but it was meaningful and it was full of hope. In the end, Ao's story became a lesson for everyone who knew it, that rejection does not define a person, that kindness and perseverance are stronger than cruelty and arrogance, and that life rewards those who follow their dreams with courage and integrity. The boy who had once been sent away had proven that resilience, hard work, and a good heart could create a life greater than anyone had imagined.